Hey, Rick, what did you eat last night?
I had spaghetti squash, Kate. I made spaghetti squash.
Okay.
So it was this recipe that I saw on Rachael Ray, and at the time I'm watching it, it looks so good. And I always think, spaghetti squash, oh, great. It's a great thing to replace spaghetti with something else. That's super healthy. And so I made it, basically I roasted the squash, and then once that cools, you shred it out with a fork. And then the sauce that went with it was basically a Parmesan Reggiano in a blender. And I set that aside. And then just in the simple pesto sauce, it was nuts, garlic, the zest of one lemon. And I just put that into like a smooth paste.
So no herb?
No, it's just the garlic and the zest of one lemon, baby. And then you put that in there with the cheese. And then you mix that back with the cheese. And then you had EV extra virgin olive oil that I put in there when I processed it all together. And that was it. Oh, there's basil in there. I'm sorry, yeah.
That makes sense, because I've never heard of a pesto without any herbs at all.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So it was a basil pesto. So you put that in there, and then basically once the spaghetti squash is done, you obviously put it all together. And I thought, the sauce is really tasty, but it's always this problem I have is when I'm going to replace a food that's not particularly that good for you, like spaghetti, with something else, and it's named spaghetti, but it's not really spaghetti. I'm always so severely disappointed. So I had it, I ate it, and by the end, I was like, I'm done with spaghetti squash. I'm never making it again.
Totally, and it's not like it's that healthy. It's still super carby, so it's not like it's not like cauliflower where you really are like getting a free pass. All those squashes. I remember when Heather put me on that cleanse thing, I was only allowed to have I don't remember, like a half a cup a day of sweet potatoes as my carb. Like it was,
oh my God.
Because the carbs in the veggies are not to be discounted. So
yeah.
So if it's not that great, then I'd say,
Totally, and it's not worth the work. I'm like, I'd rather just have pasta that just doesn't turn to mush in your mouth.
It's so much work. I got to get back to those. What were they called? Those shirataki noodles. Remember that I was eating for a while? Those fake noodles.
Many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I still have some in my fridge. At some point, we'll do an experiment and see if they're still good.
When I come out there next time.
Exactly. We'll check
Cook them
out
up as an appetizer.
Exactly.
How about you? What did you eat?
I made butter chicken and brown basmati rice in my Instant Pot.
Well, that sounds terrible.
And I made them at the same time, which was pretty
amazing.
Really? Yes.
How?
It was amazing. So you put the stuff for the butter chicken on the bottom, and then I got a little trivet thing with legs, and then I put that on top of it, and then, you know what I mean? Legs that go down into the liquid, and it rests above the liquid. And then you put a metal bowl with your rice and water, and in my case, ghee and salt. And then you cover that with tinfoil.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's so good.
Ever since I stopped eating meat, the only thing that really gets me going is when I hear you say butter chicken, because it just sounds so heavenly.
It is, and I know how much you love ghee, and I make it with ghee.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
And it's just a really good tomato sauce. It's a little bit like a tikka masala sauce, but not. And I made it a healthier version this time, because I made it the first time according to recipe, and it has a lot of butter in it and a little cream. But it's only like a couple tablespoons of cream and 6 servings, so it's okay. But this time I cut way back, and I cut a little too far back, so next time I think I'll split the difference. So it will end up being not super unhealthy, but also, because this time I made it was pretty healthy. Like it had like a tablespoon of fat per serving or something, which, is good for you. So, it was ghee, it wasn't, but still, ghee's not the worst fat in the world.
No.
Yeah, and the brown basmati rice with ghee and salt made in the Instant Pot is ridiculously good. Like, I'm not a real rice fan, but there's something about this. My friend Carrie was over one time when I made that with something in there, and we were just eating the rice like, oh my God, this is delicious, playing.
I do love when the basmati rice comes out well.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. I'm Kate.
And I'm Rick.
And this is our ongoing conversation about food, health, weight management, and our endeavor to be and stay healthy in a really tasty world.
With love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others. Hey, Kate, do you know someone named Kappy?
I do now.
Now, how did you find out about this man named Kappy?
Well, At least a year ago now, maybe more, you told me about this podcast I should listen to. And I was like, okay, because at that point I still wasn't listening to any podcasts, which I know is ridiculous since I have had one for several years.
Do we hear the irony?
Yeah, exactly. But I was like, okay. And then luckily you just kept occasionally going, you really might like this. I listened to another one of these episodes. I really think you might enjoy it. He did this great interview with Giada De Laurentiis, and I was like, oh, wait, what now? And so
You were obsessed about that interview. You really did like that interview a lot.
I really did. My ears just pricked up, and I looked, and I was like, oh, my gosh. He is talking to all of the chefs that I admire so much, and so I started listening, and then I got obsessed, and I just binged the first season, and then the second one came out right then, so I binged that. So I ended up finishing the first 2 seasons before you had, which is ironic since you discovered it quite a bit before I did.
Totally.
But there's no zealot like a convert, as we all know. So since I was converted, I was obsessed. So we are super, super psyched to have Kappy as our guest because we have admired his work
for quite a long time. And there's so many things I think everyone's going to enjoy about his work that sort of, I think, ties into on a lot of levels the same things we like to talk about here.
For one thing, he is deep in the food world, and he knows and talks to and is friends with and works with a lot of people that we really admire. I mean, as you'll find out, he works for Rachael Ray and with Rachael Ray, and he knows all of these Food Network people really well. So that's a huge one.
People we admire and people we've learned so much from over the years.
Yeah,
so that's a really great thing.
And his podcast really highlights not only their work, but their personal lives a little bit. And then he also goes into the whole concept of giving back. That's the whole point of his Behind the Plate podcast, is about how chefs give back in the world and in their communities. And that really ties in to our concept on here about living with love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others.
And it's really moving, a lot of the stories that you'll hear on his podcast about all these chefs that you've known for years and what they're doing behind the scenes, beyond the plate, to make the world such a better place. I mean, some of the stories are just spectacular and moving, so you'll really like them.
Yeah, whether you watch any of these TV shows and know these people or not, it's still really just lovely to hear what they're doing. And it's also cool to hear him talk about how he stays healthy in a tasty world as somebody who is really... He knows every good restaurant in the world. Like he
and every good chef in the world.
Yeah. So this is a man with access to basically the best food in the world. And how does he stay fit and how does he stay healthy? So all of these things tie in so beautifully with all of our themes that we're really excited to have him as a guest on our show this episode.
Andrew Kaplan, he goes by Kappy, currently serves as the VP of Culinary Operations for the Rachael Ray brand. He is the co-founder and director of Rachael Ray's cooking and kids charity, Yummo. He is also the founder and CEO of Culinary Advisors, LLC, a strategic culinary advisory service. Kappy served as a project manager for the South Beach Food and Wine Festival and other festivals. He is a professionally trained chef. And in his spare time, I mean, who knows how he has any spare time, he is a member of the Chicago Public Schools Food Advisory Group. He's also on the Advisory Council for Urban School Food Alliance, and among many, many other things.
Yeah, and he has even less spare time now because he and his wife just had twin babies who are now a few months old. So obviously that's occupying a lot of his time.
If you follow him on Instagram, you'll occasionally get glimpses of those beautiful babies.
Yeah, you just want to wash their cheeks or wuzha. They're very cute little babies. And those babies are going to have some great palates. They are. They're going to grow up eating really great food.
I can only imagine what it would be like to grow up with a great palate.
Oh, my gosh, right? Oh, my goodness.
I think about it all the time because that wasn't a point of conversation, I think, at least when my parents were around, right? But when I hear about it now, I just see all these kids being exposed to all this food early on. I'm like, if only.
Yeah, and on his current season of his podcast, Kappy is not at all selfishly asking everybody about how they teach their kids to have a good palate. Have you noticed this? The episodes that have been out so far. Yeah, and I love that everybody's thinking about it. And apparently, if you're wondering, well, you should listen to the shows. But the answer is you just feed them stuff. Like feed them stuff early on that you wouldn't think they would eat. It seems to be the answer, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, put it in front of them. See what happens.
Totally. So we have truncated his intro a little bit because this is one of our extra long bonus episodes, and he does actually talk about some of his background during the show. And anything that you're curious about that we don't get to over the course of the episode, you can look up on his website, which is beyondtheplatepodcast.com. So enjoy. Kappy, tell us about Beyond the Plate. Tell us about your podcast. What is it? What made you want to do it?
So Beyond the Plate is a podcast where I sit down with chefs or restaurateurs from around the world to talk about their journey into the world of food and how they got where they are and how they give back to their community. My whole philosophy from my travels through work is that these chefs or restaurateurs are incredible. They put together an incredible restaurant, incredible food, and people go in or they hear about it, they eat it, and they love it, and they tell 3 friends, and they tell 3 friends, yet these chefs do so much more behind the scenes than cooking what's on your plate. And chefs get bugged almost every... chefs could do an event almost every day of the week where people call them and say, hey, I'm calling from this charity. Would you be able to come and do the event and provide 300 tasting-sized portions?
Wow.
Well, it's a lot of food, and chefs and restaurants many of them don't make a lot of money. So I always joke when someone's like, hey, can you help me with this event and help me get some chefs? We just need 300 portions. And I was like, do you walk into like a clothing store and be like, can I just get 10 pair of jeans for my event? Like, why do people do that with food?
Yeah. And the labor. Never mind the ingredients.
Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to highlight chefs and how giving they are, quite frankly. And it started off with Chef Michael Solomonov, who was one of the early chefs from season 1. He's in Philadelphia, and he's Israeli, has an incredible story, and he does a lot of charity work to the extent that one of his restaurants gives all of their, after costs, they give all of their profits to the Broad Street Ministry in Philadelphia to help feed hungry Philadelphians.
Wow.
And he does incredible work. He does charity work with a Palestinian woman, bringing people around a table. It's just like incredible the type of work they do, the power that food has. Actually, Beyond the Plate, I originally was calling it The Power of Food. I still love that title, but then when I think about it, I was like, it probably isn't the right title. So we shipped it to Beyond the Plate.
But if you know what you mean by it, it's really cool.
Yeah. So just to expand a little bit on that, over 10 years ago, I'm a big James Lipton Inside the Actor Studio fan, which I have to imagine you are.
We are.
I love his questions. I love how dry he is. Like, for how dry he is, he's so captivating at the same time. Yeah. And he asks questions that you're not going to see on Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or anything like that. So I was like, why can't you take this and do it with chefs? It was kind of happening. There was a small PBS show with the old, or former, she's since passed, I believe, director of a culinary program in New York. And so I kind of stopped. I didn't think about it anymore. I was like, it's kind of out there. Meanwhile, a few years later, I moved back to Chicago. I was like, no, this still could be neat. Like, to get big name chefs in front of a group of culinary students to inspire them as they're going into the industry. And for these chefs, these are their future line cooks. So I met with the president of Le Cordon Bleu culinary program in Chicago, and I shared, my vision for this, and he's like, done. You could use our school. Like, let's do it. Wow. So I did 3 of these. I did one with Chef Art Smith, or Oprah's former chef. I did one with Paul Kahn and Donnie Medea from Big Star and Blackbird and Quebec and all that. And I did one with Tony Mantuano from Spiaggia. And I just did these because I wanted 100 students in their chef whites to come and bring their resume and shake their hand, which they did, and they lined up to shake the chef's hand.
Wow.
So and for these chefs, they're like, I could always use more, staff and line cooks, especially now with the amount of restaurants opening. And it was pretty successful, but I just did it as a lecture series. I said I need to capture these on video, just so I have them, the school could use them, put them in their culinary library if they have one. And so someone put me in touch with a gentleman who worked at Harpo Productions at the time to shoot it. So he came and he shot it with 2 or 3 cameras. Oh, wow. So he brought a senior supervising producer for Oprah's show. Oh, my gosh. Who was super into food.
Oh, nice.
And afterwards, she's like, this is great. Can I type something up for you? And she typed me up this whole, pitch.
Oh, my gosh.
Oprah-magizing it.
Wow.
She's like, let's go to a restaurant and do this and that. And I was like pump the brakes.
Wow.
That's not like I should jump on that, but it wasn't my like long-term vision at the time, and it's still not necessarily my long-term vision, but it wasn't my long-term vision, and so I just stopped. I just stopped doing it. And over the next, I don't even want to say months, many years, I would run into chefs at different wine and food festivals I was at, and they would come up to me and be like, hey, are you still doing that interview thing at the school? Like, I'd love to do it. And I was like, wow, dang it. Like, what can I do with this?
That's so interesting. And you only did 3.
I only did 3.
That's amazing.
And I was like, as podcasting started to become what it is, I was like, maybe this is an interesting medium because it's very mobile. So I started the podcast with a former colleague of mine, Ian Cohen. He's a media pro. He used to work for a big global PR firm. He now works in-house for PayPal and Venmo doing digital-related content. And then one of my best friends and former colleague, Shant Petrosian, he's a celebrity TV producer, so he's worked with tons of big TV shows, producing literally almost every major celebrity, and he's so talented. So he helps me when I come up with the questions or content. He kind of makes it make a little more sense for me. It's the equivalent if you sent me a recipe for like marinara sauce and you were like, how's this look? I'd be like, use a little less basil, add the onions here, cook them out for 6 minutes instead of 4. Like, it's not easy for me to do, but I would know how to navigate the recipe.
Yeah.
That's how I feel Shant is with my questions. He's like, put this here and this here, but ask this like this. And he's like, did that help? I was like, yeah, tremendously. But for him, it's just like, it's work, but it's what he's so good at. And then another gentleman, Joel Yeaton, who's an editor, super into food, and his nickname is the Wizard because he's fast and great at
I
what
want
he
a friend
does.
called the Wizard.
So I call him the Wiz sometimes. But so yeah, that's kind of the medium to long, more towards long story of it, but how the podcast came together.
Nice. Cool. And I started listening to it because you were interviewing people that I admire and that I love their recipes and stuff, and so it was really cool to hear not only their stories, but the thing that's so interesting is about the giving back part is what is so interesting, and that connects to what we're interested in too. Yeah.
The other thing that's so touching to me about the way you described the way it started with those kids and getting them into the chefs is there's something so great about the power, going beyond the plate, right? So that there's more to all of this stuff about food than just the TV shows, right? Because I just get so overwhelmed sometimes with how inundated everyone is with all the food, everything is with all the food channels, and there's so much focus on food, but to really understand how you can use it for like a higher purpose, it makes me so happy. Yeah. And that's what I loved about the podcast from the get-go.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Absolutely. And there was a point where I wanted to highlight what all these chefs did, but I thought that it was going to be very similar of how they gave back, but it's actually very different, like in a great way. Yeah. How they all give. Some of them have their own charities. Some of them give back to a cause that's meaningful to them for a certain reason. Some of them haven't had an extreme misfortune, so they help a former mentor or friend who does help for a certain foundation or organization.
Do you encounter a lot of chefs who, they're like, no, nothing?
In terms of giving back?
And then you're like, okay, thank you, click.
No, not really.
That's even cooler.
I know, because they all, like, if they don't do something like super personal to them, they all do, if they're in New York, they do something for City Harvest, a food rescue organization, or they do something for Food Bank for New York City. Or if they're in LA, a lot of the big ones do something for Alex's Lemonade, which a lot of the chefs have talked about on the podcast. So at the very least, they're creating a dish for an event that's a benefit for something, and I like to let them believe, or I like to make sure they know that they're not just cooking something because someone asked them and going to an event and leaving. Like, it's actually doing good for someone. So, I don't know. So, but they all pretty much do good. I mean, Rich Melman I talked to from Let Us Entertain You here in Chicago, and he he didn't talk about, I know he's done plenty of like charity and foundation work, and I know his whole organization does, but I also know how well his organization treats his staff through anything from marriages to, babies being born to someone sick in a staffer's family or whatever it is. I know how caring they are as an organization.
That's nice to know.
So he talked a lot about how he was helping out. In his early days, he was helping out one of the employees with something, and his business partner was like, stop writing checks for...
Well, do you even know that a restaurant or a chain or a company will give back to its employees is a huge thing that I always like to think about when I spend my money at restaurants.
Yeah.
Like absolutely. How they're being treated. Like, are they getting enough sick pay? Right? Are they getting time off?
Yep. I think it's huge. I think Danny Meyer was big in the whole community relations from Union Square Hospitality Group in New York. Probably best known for Shake Shack now, but did plenty before that.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I've been following him for years. I'm always so touched by what he does for his employees.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So
that's why, as I didn't go to Shake Shack very early on, because, when you go, you're like, definitely committing to 3,000 calories, and it had to stop.
Right.
I'm like, I can't do it anymore. But then the more I fell in love with him, I'm like, oh yeah, I just got to go with Shake Shack more. I got to give him more of my money.
I think I like to see more and more of these organizations doing good for the community. I think there's people. I mean, you look at Panera; they have a whole nonprofit it's like a pay what you want type restaurant they started. There's a couple of them now, and it actually doesn't lose money.
Nice.
Wow.
Michael Solomonoff has Rooster Soup Company in Philly. There's another one in Philly, Good Food Kitchen. I forget the name of it. But I don't know. I think a lot of them are thinking about that now.
And that's one of the things your podcast really highlighted that I had never really thought about, is that seems to be a big part of the culture of chefs. And it makes sense that if you're drawn to nurturing people through food, then you're drawn to nurturing people in other ways perhaps too. Yeah, it's nice.
So, Kappy, what did you eat last night?
Oh, what did I eat last night? I ate meatloaf and roasted potatoes. I never eat meatloaf. My wife and I had a whole conversation about meatloaf, but my mother-in-law made meatloaf and brought it over.
Oh, wow.
She's an amazing cook. She has her master's in home economics. How's that?
Oh, wow, really?
Oh,
so
my
when
goodness.
I take a shirt to the dry cleaner to have him sew a button on, she's like, you're an idiot. Give me your shirt. She made meatloaf, and it got me thinking, because we sat at the table, and Katie's like, do I like meatloaf? And I was like, she's like, what is it? I was like, hamburger baked in a pan, basically. But, I had this conversation because we went to like a nice steakhouse, which I'm not a fan of, here in the city with a bunch of friends. And I almost ordered the meatloaf. Everyone's like, are you crazy? You're not ordering a steak? I was like, no, I don't need to order a $75 steak that tastes the same for 15 bites, rather than meatloaf, which they're probably putting in delicious trimming from like good parts of the meat and making it taste like something.
It's going to deliver.
Yeah. So we had meatloaf, and then we had some not leftover, they weren't cooked, baby red potatoes. So I took those and I halved them and I tossed them with olive oil, salt, pepper, and I roasted them cut side down in a 400-degree oven for about 20-25 minutes, and dipped them in hot sauce, because hot sauce
solves a lot.
A yellow sriracha that my brother-in-law just brought me back from Thailand.
Yellow
sriracha?
Really
good. Yeah.
Really?
Oh,
really good.
That's interesting.
How's that differ in taste?
It was more pure because it was just like chilies, basically, and some vinegar. It didn't have like random stuff in there. It's really good though.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good gift.
Yeah. So yeah, I had meatloaf and potatoes.
That's a very good American Chicago meal.
Yeah. Afterwards, I had 2 gummy vitamins because sometimes I feel like dessert. And then I still wanted something sweet, so my wife's on this kick. There's a brand of hummus they sell here at Mariano's grocery store. It's like a dessert hummus, and it has coconut oil and chickpeas still. And it sounds maybe disgusting to people, and it sounded disgusting to me, but it's actually good. There's a brownie batter flavor, and a snickerdoodle flavor.
Really?
There's a vanilla bean and a red velvet, which I haven't had, but we dip graham crackers in them. And it's a good dessert cheat. How's that?
Wow.
I like that.
And then I had a graham cracker, and then I didn't want to feel too indulgent, so I stopped after 1 graham cracker, and then I had a square of chocolate that was in my refrigerator from Eclat Chocolate, which is a chocolatier in Westchester, Pennsylvania, near QVC. Chris Curtin, I believe is his name, and he did a special chocolate bar to benefit City Harvest Food Restoration in New York.
Wow, that's a dessert.
Yeah.
That's what I had for dinner last night.
That's a good one.
Let me ask you this. So when we talk on our podcast, a lot of what our listeners are interested in is this idea about how do you stay healthy in a tasty world. So I've always struggled with weight and had weight problems my entire life. So after you eat, do you ever get into this frame of mind of thinking what you ate, how you feel about it? Should I not eaten that? Either like that night or the next morning. Is that ever a conversation that's in your head?
Always. Yeah. I talked about this with Rachael Ray, and she's always like everything in moderation. It's hard for me because I work around food, and like I would love to try a vegan diet or the Whole30 or paleo or this. They're all interesting to me. Well, yeah, I mean, I travel a lot, and sometimes I eat a lot, but I also am very mindful of what I eat, and I like to think I'm mindful about food and what I'm putting in my body, and I know every single thing I put in my body may not be perfect, and that sounds weird because it should be. Like, it's your body.
Yeah.
But there's times where I'm like, all right, we just sat down and ate Chinese food, and then I went back to the counter to put it away, and as I was putting it away, I took like 3 more pieces of orange chicken, but I was done.
Yeah.
But I think that's like part of the rule, like with Chinese food,
That's right.
So, and now like I'm like, all right, do I need to eat those 3 more pieces of Chinese food or not? I also have these amazing ginger pills from this juice store in New York. They had a ginger fireball juice, it was called. Ooh. And they made it into a lozenge. And so sometimes I'm like, I feel full. And then I'll take a ginger pill, like thinking that like now I'm healthy. But they're really good for you.
It does good things.
So yeah, my wife and I are going to Mexico in April for a friend's 40th birthday, and in December we're like, all right, come the new year, like everybody, we're going to eat better. And then the first week of January comes and we're like, all right, starting next week, we're going to eat better.
Right after the orange chicken.
And then I'm like, can I swear on this?
Yes.
Please.
All right, I'm like, fuck, like, that didn't, like, work. Like, starting February, like, January, let's just call January wash. Like, starting February, like, we're eating, like, 2 strong months, and it hasn't been.
When you talked about being thoughtful and being mindful, did that come easy for you? Was it always that way for you, or is it something you had to develop? Because it's still something, obviously, to this day that I still struggle with.
Good question. I don't know how I developed that, but I seem to be mindful when it comes to like food and eating. I don't know. I seem to be mindful when it comes to food and eating. Like, I've always been that person where I can open a bag of Doritos and like have 3 chips.
Really?
And put it away, and people are like, "You are crazy." Or like open the Skittles and take like 5 and like put them away. They're like, "How are you not eating the whole bag?"
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I could eat the whole bag. But I can also, like, Katie's like, you've had this chocolate bar for 3 weeks in our fridge. I'm like, yeah, because I have, like, a square, like, every now and then. She's like, just eat the damn chocolate bar.
Get it out of the fridge.
I like your wife.
I don't know. For me, like, I know I'm going to crave something sweet. So, depending how you look at chocolate, like, a square for me, like, it satisfies my craving. Sometimes, you know how, like, they'll say, wait 10 or 15 minutes after you ate something because you don't realize how full you are. Yes, it's true, But I don't know. So I've always been that person who could, again, I could eat the whole tin of Pringles or, something like that. But
It's also true that intellectually, I know that makes sense, that in terms of addictive foods in particular, you get the rush from the first bite, and then you don't anymore.
Right.
And so you're always chasing it, like you were saying about the steak. It's going to taste the same for the next 15 bites.
Yeah.
And yet somehow that doesn't translate, even though I understand that in my brain. So something in you is wired differently.
I don't know. I know. I had a friend
lucky,
who,
eh?
Yeah, right. I had a friend who, when we were eating, when he burped, he would stop. Like, he was done.
Oh, interesting.
He's like, I'm done. I was like, you still have food. Like, you ate half your meal. He's like, I'm done. Like,
I always try the chocolate squares in the freezer, and I was really good about having a bar that you could break off into chocolates, and then so after dinner, I'd go to the freezer, I'd get my little square out. Great. 5 minutes later, I'd go back and get my other square out.
Totally.
And then just keep getting the next square out until the whole bar's gone the same night.
Like, I think frozen Charleston Chews are like magic.
Oh.
I know they're not like great for you, but I'm like, okay, if I take a little 1-inch piece of a Charleston Chew and eat it like after dinner, that's not as bad as like having a whole Charleston Chew every night for dinner. It's probably a mental game with me to an extent, but I also try to be mindful of, if I go to a restaurant, I tend to know the quality of the food when I go to a certain restaurant and like what to order and not to order. I went to a Lebanese place I mentioned earlier to you all in Philadelphia called Soraya, and I had some dips, like a Lebna yogurt dip. And Lebna is probably more full fat than like other yogurts, but they make this yogurt and it comes from real ingredients. And I think Rachael and I have spoken about this. Rachael Ray and I have spoken about this. She'd rather someone use a little less full fat cheese or sour cream than more low fat or no fat
Good
cheese.
Lord, yeah.
There's a lot more crap ingredients in that stuff. So,
it's healthier and more satisfying and it's going to taste better.
Right.
Agreed.
So. Anything else aside from that you talked about? Anything else you do to stay healthy in a tasty world?
I try and stay active. I will take workout classes. I have a Peloton bike. I think that helps me stay more like stable than gaining a lot of weight. For me, I know I gain weight and feel more unhealthy when I snack a lot. Like if I'm at home and I finish an hour-long conference call, I'll hang up the phone, get up, and go like snack. But if I was out working at a coffee shop or somewhere, I wouldn't do that. So I'll tend to try to not stay home as much, especially now with newborn twins at home. But for me, getting on a little more healthier kick or lifestyle often is removing snacking from my routine or making snacking something a little more nutritious, like almonds or something like that. I mean, I could eat the best of shitty junk food. I've had plenty of Egg McMuffins from McDonald's when I fly out of O'Hare, and I'm like, it's an English muffin, it's a real egg, it's Canadian bacon, and it's cheese.
Yeah, there you go.
Is it that horrible? I mean, I don't know. Maybe. It's one of the best sandwiches ever created.
Yeah, I'm a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit girl from McDonald's.
You?
Yeah.
I love hearing people's.
That's my guilty McDonald's pleasure: bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit.
I'm always an egg and cheese croissant guy from Burger King.
Really?
Well, because everything's so highly processed and fake. It just tastes so good going down.
Don't get me wrong. Last time I was in Philly in December, I had a 7:30 flight. I was at the airport like 6 a.m., 6 or 6:30, and Chick-fil-A was open. And I was like, "Which breakfast sandwich do you recommend?" The woman behind the counter is like, "Actually, I don't like any of our breakfast sandwiches. I just eat the spicy chicken." I was like, "All right, all the spicy chicken." And I was like that guy, and I usually watch people. I'm like, "How are you eating a Philly cheesesteak at 7 in the morning?" But I
could do that. I've been having breakfast salads lately.
Really?
Yeah. I find that I'm not standing on ceremony so much about when I'm eating when. So, what's your food journey? How did you end up in a career in food?
I grew up in the food world. So my father always worked on the wholesale side of the food industry. So he owned a deli when I was born, but I don't remember that. And then as long ago as I could remember, he worked for Vienna Beef here in Chicago. The makers of the Chicago style hot dog. And much more. So I grew up not going to summer camp that much, but going, on the truck, with Dad to all the produce market and the stockyards of Chicago and seeing the wholesale side of the industry. So delivering the food to the restaurants and things like that. But my mom was the cook in the family. Okay. So she was always cooking, and she was always pulling the chair up and having me stand on it and taste something. I can remember from early days she would make a sauce and give it to me on a spoon and say, does it need more orange juice? Does it need more, sherry or soy sauce or ginger? And I was like, what do you mean does it need more? I didn't get what she was doing. And I think I had a little tabletop fry daddy, like a small one, and I would fry. My dad would bring home stuff from a factory and, clam strips or chicken nuggets or fries, and I have 2 older brothers, so they would probably come home drunk from college or a late night in high school, and I was waiting up for them, and then I would, fry something.
So cute.
So I was probably the perfect little brother for them. I always loved. I liked cooking. Food was interesting to me. I was always watching the kitchen when I would go out to eat with my parents, and I remember I would always order fettuccine Alfredo, not knowing that Alfredo was like a cheesy, creamy sauce. And then it would come, and I would say to my mom, it's too cheesy. And then she would always, as a nice Jewish mother that she is, return, say, oh, my son doesn't like this dish. Could we have something else? And later on, I was like, I just always returned that fettuccine Alfredo, saying it was cheesy.
So funny that you at one point were like, I guess I don't love fettuccine Alfredo.
Right. And so when I was in high school, people had said you should go to culinary school. And I was like, that's silly. This was before Food Network is what it is or was turning into. Yeah. And so I went to University of Kansas for 2 years, and I loved it. But it came time to go into a school of business or journalism or whatever it was. And I was looking into that, and I had some older friends there, and they're like, hey, go into communications school, take my work. And I was like, what the hell am I doing here? I don't know. And I was up late a couple of nights and saw an infomercial, and I think it was for a culinary program affiliated with Brown University in Minnesota or something. Is Brown in Minnesota?
Where's Rhode Island?
Brown's in Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it was for. It was for, and it wouldn't be Brown, but it was for a culinary program affiliated with some school. And so I applied for the paperwork, and it came. I lived in a house. There's 8 guys. We lived in a house in Lawrence, Kansas, which I still love Lawrence to this day. And some of my roommates were like, "What the hell is this, Kaplan?" And I was like, "What?" They're like, "Culinary school application." And I was like, I was just looking into it. What is this? This was my sophomore year of college, and we were all going on spring break to Vegas, and they were going for almost 5 days or 6 days, and I was like, I don't need to spend that much time in Vegas, A. B, I went out to the East Coast and visited Johnson & Wales in Rhode Island and the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. And then I went and visited them in Vegas for about 2 nights or 3 nights, which was plenty. And I wound up going to CIA in New York. For a few reasons. One, Johnson & Wales I think is a great school, but it was a university, and I had already had 2 years of university experience. And CIA is, you're there for cooking. That's all. It's like boot camp in a great way for cooking. So I just wanted to buckle down and do it. So I did, just wanting to learn about food. And I had an incredible extern experience. I did it at the Four Seasons in Beverly Hills in Los Angeles. So I had a really great experience, and they put me in all different parts of the food and beverage department at the Four Seasons. The last one I was in was the banquet department, which they do high-end weddings and things like that. So I learned great skills from the banquet chefs. And I came back to culinary school, and the first class I was in upon returning was banquets class. So I cruised through that class. I finished my work. I was helping other people, doing the dishes for everybody, and my chef instructor is like, Kaplan, come. He pulled me out of class, in a hallway, a banquet table area. He's like, what's your story? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know. He's like, you finish all your work, like you're helping everybody, you're doing dishes. I was like, all I could say is I just came from the Four Seasons and I had a great experience, and obviously it paid off. You know? He's like, well, what's your plan after school? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to be a chef. I just want to learn about food. He's like, go back to school. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, in 10 years, this program may be all-encompassing. Like, you may have to take, like, a bachelor's of hospitality. He's like, get ahead of it. You'll be that much more valuable. He's like, listen. He's like, 10 years from now, if you stay in the kitchen, you could be one of the best chefs in this country. He's like, go back to school. And I was like, all right. You know, and so I went to apply for the bachelor's program at CIA. I said it was closed. Meanwhile, some of my classmates were ahead of me, and they had already applied and got in. So then I went to the president of CIA. My mom always taught me to go to the top. So I went to the president of the school, and I said, listen, I want to get in here. It's full. I was thinking about going to, this program or and he just talked me through some of the various programs across the country. So I had some family in Florida, in South Florida. So I wound up going back to school to Florida International University. I got my degree in restaurant management with a minor in hotel management. And then after I finished that school, one of my other professors was like, what are you doing after this? You should go back to school and get a marketing degree. I was like, I'm like, this is my third school right now.
Stop telling me to go back to school now.
So that was FIU was cool. I mean, it's still one of the top hospitality schools in the country. It's truly incredible. They're one of the hosts of the Food Network and Cooking Channel South Beach Wine and Food Festival. And that's how I got my start. I was a student volunteer.
And that's how you hooked up with Rachael Ray and all the fancy people.
You were there for a while, right? You did was it 9 or 10 years there?
I graduated, so I moved to Florida the second year. This festival's going in February, its 18th year. And I moved to Florida year 2.
Oh, wow.
I moved down there a week after it happened. So I was a student volunteer, but I had come from CIA, and the chefs at FIU knew CIA was like, the students knew like what work ethic was. Yeah. And so I was a student volunteer and just caught the eye of some people from the festival, from Food and Wine magazine, and again, I went to FIU not knowing what I was going to do after. And my brother twice, my older brother Greg, he's like, why are you going to the school? Like, what do you want to do after? I was like, I don't know. I want to keep learning about food, And, same thing. And I thought I was going to go work for a big restaurant group. And Lee Schrager, who's the founder and director of the festivals, he's like, why don't you come work with us? So I was one of the first full-time hires. So,
wow.
So why don't you come work with us? You'll network, you'll meet some people for a year or two. Meanwhile, I was there for 3. And when I left, he's like, what do you mean you're leaving? I was like, you're the one who told me to stay for a year or 2. But yeah, I met all these Emerald and Tyler Florence and Rachael and Giada and all these people before they had an assistant and an agent and a publicist and a manager. And literally, I was just talking to them directly to get recipes for their cooking demo. And I produced Giada's first cooking demo. She cut herself on stage to get her Band-Aid. So she was so nervous.
It's a legend now, I bet.
Yeah. What's just so wonderful about that whole journey you just told us? It all comes back to this idea that you really had no end game. You were just following what you knew was right.
100%.
I was just about to say that, following your passion. Yeah. Yes.
And I don't know how to say this, but sometimes it comes up a lot when we interview people and we talk to people, and about my own journey, which is this whole idea of what's so hard about food intake is really just trying to follow what you know is right. And it's so hard for me personally, right? And I've sort of given up trying to figure out why that is, but I'm just trying to be aware of it. Yeah. But it speaks to this thing so wonderfully. Can you just tune in, and really just pay attention to what your body needs, what you know it needs, what you know is right.
Yeah. I think, a couple of things. One, when everyone's like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Like, if I told you every year of my life from when I was 18 years old where I was going to be 5 years from now, it would never have been where I would have said one time. Yeah. Ever. It's ever. I mean, even I've been with Rachael Ray for over 12 years now.
Oh my gosh.
And even what I do for her day to day, I was just with her on Friday, and I have like a new project, that I didn't foresee coming. So there's that part. Shifting gears to what you were saying of, the body and what you needed in mindfulness. I don't know if this is exactly what you were hitting on, but I think a big part for me also is like the basics of what's good for the body, like water. Like when I don't drink enough water during the day, I feel different the next day. Mm-hmm. No joke. If I have like a quart of water, which is not enough, I'll feel more sluggish during the next day. If I hydrate really well, I feel like a new person. Sleep, obviously it's tough, for me now. I rode the Peloton bike. It was like a short-ish 30-minute class last night, and then had dinner, cleaned up, went to bed, and we were feeding the kids at 5 a.m, and I was like exhausted. I was like, why are you so tired this morning? I was like, maybe it's because that class I did last night plus the waking up early. I don't know, because sleep is important. Some people go out 4 hours. I get it.
I wish I was one of those people.
Yeah.
It's so easy to overlook the easy things, like water. Yeah. For example, it's so easy to blow it off, or just walking, like things that are simple and not a big deal, like they don't have the bells and whistles, so it's easy to be like, I'm not going to worry about water and taking a walk. Let me do something complicated.
And I think it's hard, you work out and you think like, you work out once or for 1 week and you're like, why haven't I lost 10 pounds? Well, it's like it's not how it works. I think like I use a Vitamix often, which I tell everyone, like, save your money and invest in it. It's one of the best kitchen investments. And my wife and I did this the year leading up to when we were getting married, and I started to do it again, but I've slacked a little in making like a green smoothie juice, which I personally love.
We don't know anything about slacking on smoothies.
We've talked a lot about smoothies over the years.
We're so into them, and to this day we're like, what the hell happened?
What happened? Why don't we make smoothies anymore?
So you're telling me this, and I would tell you, like, here's what you got to do, this, and that. I don't take my own advice. Just freeze the fruit. I have frozen fruit in my freezer right now. Your greens are going bad. Guess what? You could freeze greens too. My greens are frozen in the freezer right now. So I just
can make the smoothie and then freeze it. I've done that too.
Yes, you can make the smoothie. I have an incredible formula which I'm happy to share of like any greens to any fruit to any liquid, and it makes 2 16-ounce smoothies, and they stay good for at least 2 days. So I was intended to make a batch last night when the kids were awake, but I didn't. And it was going to be for this morning and tomorrow morning, and even like starting your day with that, it makes you feel pretty good, you know?
Yeah. How is that different than a salad?
Right. It's like a juice cleanse. I'm like I did it once to say I did a juice cleanse, but I'm sure, I know they're good for you, but at the very least, for someone who doesn't live that lifestyle, it's like jump-starting you into wanting to eat better, move more, things like that.
And it ties into our other sort of tagline in our podcast is about staying healthy with love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others. And everything we're talking about here is how to be compassionate with yourself.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to go home and make a quinoa bowl tonight with like chicken that I make sous vide and this and that, and put just a good salsa or sauce or whatever. And Katie may come home and say, honey, can we order burgers from Small Cheval or like Five Guys? And I'll be like, yeah, sure. Whatever you want. She's like, do you want fries? I'm like, yeah.
I like Katie more and more.
But I can't I'm not gonna. I can say no, I want to eat healthy, but I don't want to punish myself by not doing it. So if I can for me personally, if I could cut out snacking, be active, ride the bike or work out 3, 4, 5 times a week, I think I'll stay pretty stable, or I know I'll be healthier, obviously, but
totally.
So you've seen a lot of people eat over the course of your lifetime, I imagine. So when you think about people overeating, what would be your biggest piece of advice on how to practice compassion towards that idea of them maybe overeating? You see them, beating themselves up for overeating.
Right? Like that.
How to teach that, like, compassion for them?
Yeah, what would be your biggest piece of advice about compassion, about how to treat yourself well?
You know, as I mentioned earlier, it's moderation. I think it's baby steps. I mean, if you're coming to me for that, I'm not going to say, start a green smoothie tomorrow, eat a salad for lunch, and eat steamed chicken and white rice tomorrow night. Stop snacking, cut out all soda, drink more water. Like, that's all not going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
So know that it's not going to happen tomorrow. And know that it's not only you. You know, like, we're all not alone in this.
You are not alone.
So, I don't know. I think it's baby steps in a way. When Rachel and I do some of our charity work, and there's parents that come to us and say, I never ate vegetables. How am I supposed to cook my kid vegetables?
Yeah.
You know,
it's a great question,
things
right?
like that.
Yeah.
How do I incorporate whole grains into my kid's diet? Well, if you think whole grain bread is disgusting, maybe make a grilled cheese or peanut butter and jelly with 1 piece of whole grain bread and 1 piece of white bread.
Mm-hmm.
Or half whole grain pasta and half white pasta.
Baby
so
steps.
I think for like, if I started drinking my green smoothie like 3, 4, 5 days a week starting tomorrow, I know I'll feel good, and it'll eventually like lead me to want to have a better for me lunch or dinner. I'm fortunate because I'm a trained chef, so I know how to get the flavors and or textures into my food. You know,
and it comes easy.
Don't get me wrong, I love fried chicken. Buffalo wings, like, one of my favorite foods ever. But I know there's a way, like Sweet Green, like the salad place out of D.C. Mm-hmm. There's some in Chicago now, and one of their seasonal bowls is a buffalo chicken bowl. And it's salad, but it has blackened chicken thighs, and it has their hot sauce in it, and Caesar dressing, and pickled carrots, and celery, and cherry tomatoes, and za'atar breadcrumbs.
I'm salivating.
Yeah.
We gotta go.
They're getting the crunch from the breadcrumbs, the hot sauce flavor. And don't get me wrong, I could go to Buffalo Joe's in Evanston and throw back like 20 or 30 chicken wings easy.
Yeah.
It's like my number one chicken wing. But if I'm trying to eat a little better, that salad that Sweet Green does, a place that I trust uses great ingredients and it's well executed, that's what I'm going to go for. So, and even chicken, like a sous vide machine, they're pretty affordable, I think, these days, and cooking chicken breasts in those. First off, I don't have to look at my wife stare at every piece of chicken that she puts on her fork to see if it's pink or not, because I know it's perfectly cooked.
Right.
But it's delicious. The first time I did chicken breast in a sous vide machine, I cut her off a piece, and she's like, "What did you do to this?" I'm like, "Nothing." Salt and pepper. She's like, "No way." I'm like, "It's just cooked precisely."
Yeah.
You know, to the precise temperature.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You got to set yourself up almost. Like, I have a rice cooker, a good one that isn't.
It's hot.
I know. But I'll do white rice or brown rice or quinoa in the rice cooker, and I'm a fan of like.
Farah's really good at that thing. I'm just saying,
I'm a fan of rice and
cooked in my
grains.
bone broth that I make in there too. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Listen, I have no argument here.
Hey, how do you know? You've mentioned a couple of times restaurants that you know source their ingredients well, and that's something that I care about, and I don't always know how to find that out. Like, sometimes they announce it and they make a big deal about it, and then that's easy. Is there a way, or do you just have to know people? Like, you know?
Both. Being that I'm so immersed in the industry, I think I know who owns a restaurant or the chef that's behind it, the type of or quality of food they're using. I don't know.
Okay.
It's hard because
there's not a simple answer to how the rest of us can figure it out.
Well, like, let's take Sweet Green for example. It's painted all over their ethos of their brand. You go to their website, you go into their restaurant, there's a wall of every farm that they're getting every ingredient from.
I love when people do that. I love when the menus tell you where it's from.
Like, they have a list of farmers they use for their meats or ingredients too. And you'll see on menus, and some people abuse it, like here in Chicago, you'll see Slagle Farms beef or whatever. It's a great farm, but just because they're using a Slagle Farms hamburger doesn't mean they're not using a tomato flown in from Chile or, something like that. So I don't know. I think it takes a little navigating.
What 5 things are always on your shopping list?
Lately, eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Probably Bay's English muffins.
I'm unfamiliar.
Really?
They're made here in Chicago.
Okay.
They're amazing.
Okay.
They're in the refrigerator section of the grocery store.
Okay. All right.
So airy and delicious.
All right.
Horrible packaging.
I'm sorry to know about that,
Horrible.
but okay. Thank you.
They're so good. I would like to say like Frank's Red Hot sauce. It's not always on my list, but I think it's
a staple you have to have.
Yeah.
Yep. We just had some of that last night.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Made
I
nachos.
always love having like an onion or a shallot or garlic. I think it's a great start to anything. I always like having, I think a ground meat product, whether it's chicken, turkey, beef. I think is great because you could turn it in. I mean, I could turn it into 20 different things.
Yeah. Well, and with the internet, so could we all.
Yeah.
They might not all be good.
It's a possibility.
I'm like kind of changing the question if you haven't noticed. I think people should always have salt, kosher salt. I use personally. I think citrus, like lemon or lime, is always good to have, or vinegar, cider vinegar, sherry vinegar, white wine vinegar. These are all like to the point of what we've been talking about. Ways to get flavor out of things if you are eating a little more healthy or nutritious.
Okay.
You know? And also back to what we were talking about in terms of knowing quality, take that to the grocery store. Brands like Sir Kensington's, you know, they have ketchup and mayo and products like that, but they use good quality ingredients in their product. They actually have a product called Fabonnaise. It's a vegan like mayo, and it uses the byproduct of chickpeas.
Really?
Called aquafaba, and it whips into like a product.
Have you had it?
No, but I've had products made with the aquafaba before.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. So here's my last one. So you know a lot of celebrity chefs that a lot of people that listen to our podcast, we talk about them all the time. We talk about the Food Network all the time. Everybody knows Rachael Ray and all that. Is there anything that about either anyone in particular or globally that would surprise us? Is there anything like that you can, I don't know, any behind the scenes something?
I think they all have their guilty pleasures.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Makes me happy.
You know, they're kind. They're all kind-giving people. You know, I think
lovely.
people see them on TV or Food Network or their restaurant or show, and again, to how we started this, like you never really see how they all give back, and they're all at the South Beach Wine and Food Festival. You know, every year, or these other festivals, which at the end of the day, that festival has raised over $28 million for the school.
Wow.
And so,
it's a lot.
You know, in my Neil Patrick Harris and David Burka episode, I said I want to sincerely thank you guys because to you may just be going to the festival to have fun and, you know, your name's being put on an event. They're hosting the Burger Bash this year. But, you know, to be honest, I'm a alumni of the school. And what you're doing is actually helping the school.
Super sweet.
You know, so there's that. I talked to Tim Love from Dallas Fort Worth, and I was asking him a question about a dish he made, and he's like, "Oh, it's modeled off of Jack in the Box taco." He's like, "Every chef loves Jack in the Box taco. Who doesn't?" And talking to like Tom Colicchio, and his wife's Jewish, and talking about, you know, he's like, "Oh, we just celebrated Hanukkah," so it's just like. It's fun to see the glimpse into their life or what they're making at home, or that's what I like the seeing what they do. Andrew Zimmer was talking about a chicken dish that he made at home. He's like, this is the number one requested dish like from guests at my house. Or seeing like traditions that they have with their Tom Colicchio always does like the Feast of the Seven Fishes, but this past year he did it with I think he used a pressure cooker actually. So he talked about for the first time how he made that dish, and seeing people like Rachael Ray talks about it. She'll say it 1,000 times. Carbonara is her husband's favorite dish, but carbonara is her husband's favorite dish. I mean, every year on his birthday in August, like she's making him carbonara. Yeah, and I think they're all incredibly hardworking people.
That's the truth.
You know, Rachael will shoot over 170 episodes of her daytime show a year. Some days she'll shoot 3 episodes, and then she'll go home and entertain and cook dinner.
That's amazing. And she's bringing back 30-minute meals, right?
Yes.
Is she going to be hosting it herself?
Yep.
Good Lord, that woman.
30-minute meals is coming back. I don't know. I think it's the food world is hard. People expect so much, especially from these chefs. I think in general, and this wasn't directly your question, but I think Chicago is hard on people. If a chef from another city comes in, the Chicago media is quick to say, oh, he wasn't in his kitchen. It's like, well, not every, any chef who has multiple restaurants isn't in every kitchen. So it's tough. Obviously, you want the quality to be the same.
Sure.
I was so touched in your episode with Tom, who said that the more kitchens you have, the more locations you have, the less you can be anywhere.
Yeah.
And how important it was to him to be in the kitchen.
Yeah.
He wanted to be in the place, in the kitchen, with the people. More importantly, with his employees, it seemed. He wanted to be part of the work.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's hard. Rich Melman talked about, I forgot what the exact question I asked him was. Was it harder going from 1 to 100 restaurants? Or less? And he's like, honestly, the hardest thing was going from, I forgot what he said, 2 to 8. It was harder than going from 1 to 100. Because of the systems and procedures he needed to put in place early on. He's like, once we have those in place.
Yeah.
And I know one of them, didn't they talk about biking around New York to visit each of their restaurants every day?
Yeah, Josh Kaplan.
Yeah. I loved that.
That was great.
He's a hardworking guy. He's a hardworking guy. And they have families. So Josh has a wife and 2 kids that he was always a city guy, but a year or 2 ago they moved out to Jersey, and he's got multiple restaurants in New York City. But when he goes home, it's family time.
I love that. He was so clear. And how he talked about how hard it is to find the people to entrust your restaurant to when you go home.
Yeah.
My one final question is, so the idea of beyond the plate, right? This idea of thinking about how chefs move into their communities and affect their communities. What would you say, how would that idea apply to someone like me? How do we start to think, our listeners start to think about food, the relationship to food, and what that means for moving beyond their own plate?
In terms of giving back?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you asked that, because I wanted to share this story. A few people have reached out to us. As I started saying, I do Beyond the Plate because I want to highlight how giving these chefs are. And there's plenty of people in the world of food that listen to Beyond the Plate, but there's plenty of people that have nothing to do with the food world that listen too. And my wife got a call from a cousin of a friend who owns a clothing boutique in Atlanta. And it was early on when the Michael Solomonoff, which was one of the earlier episodes, aired. And she's like, oh my God, tell Kappy that I just listened to the Michael Solomonoff episode, and I literally pulled into work and sat in my car listening and crying, thinking I need to do something with my store to get back.
Oh wow.
And that I received 2 text messages within a week. One was from a general manager of one of Danny Meyer's restaurants. One was from another restaurateur in New York, both saying, just listen to the Solomonoff episode on the subway, and had tears in my eyes. I was like, the second time I was like, you're not the only man that had tears in his eyes from that episode. He's not the only one that admitted it. But there's this other guy, this is an incredible story I put on social media the other day. And so this guy reached out, and he seemed really well-spoken and put together and had a question. Some people just are very vague about something they want to know. And his name's Matt James. And he said, hey, Kappy, I started a company called ABC Food Tours, where I bring homeless or kids from low-income families to different restaurants around the East Village or Lower East Side to help them, share a meal and learn more about food and different cultures. I was like, okay, that's cool. He's like, but I actually started this because of Beyond the Plate. He's like, I listened to your season 1 and a lot of season 2. This was a little while ago. And he's like, I listened to every episode, most of them 2-3 times. He's like, and it really struck me when I heard these chefs, to your question, long-winded answer, sorry.
No, that's great.
He said, I heard these people saying you don't have to have all the money in the world. He's like, you could give your voice, your time, or $1 if you have it. And so I went to this school. It was one of the PS, I forgot the number, in the East Village, that serves 50% homeless children. And he brings them on these tours in New York. And along with that, he went to a bagel shop in Tompkins Square in the East Village, and he saw them throwing out a lot of their bagels. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, no, we're not allowed to give these away, the bagel shop said. He's like, well, I'll take them. So he, every morning, would get a divvy bike.
Oh, my gosh.
City bike, our equivalent, divvy here. And he would ride a whole bag, like garbage bag full of clean bagels to this school for the students. And so Matt, short story long, wound up, he started these tours. It's not that old of an organization. He got noticed by New York One, the news station in New York. They did a whole piece on him.
Oh, wow.
And then one of the producers from Rachael Ray's daytime show saw the piece, and they're like, we should have this guy on the show. It's really neat what he does. And then the producer called me. They're like, did you know Matt James is doing this? And he's like a fan of Beyond the Plate podcast.
Yeah.
I was like, how do you know Matt James? They're like, we just randomly saw his story on New York One. Like they weren't, like I didn't tell them anything about it.
Great.
So they wound up having Matt on the show. It was a show that Emerald was co-hosting. And he told his story, and then they had me pick a few restaurants that donated food, and Matt just went on a tour with some of the kids, and they made a whole video about it. So I went into it because I had a bigger purpose, and we happened to get the invitation to go to South Beach Wine and Food Festival. So we happened to share that with a couple of brands that we knew may be interested, and all 4 of the brands we reached out to were like, yeah, sure, we'll be a part of it. So it helped cover the cost of us going there. I look at them as a partner, and I like to highlight what they do, in the community, and it's to help cover these costs of things, and I'm lucky we have that opportunity. So yeah, I think just inspiring people to do good and give back, and I'll just take what Rachael always says, it doesn't have to be your money, it can be your voice, your time. I had another guy, he's not going to want me to share this, I won't give his name, he's a photographer, lifestyle photographer here in Chicago, and I met him through a mutual friend. And he said, oh, you have a podcast? That's cool. I'll check it out. I saw him like 3 weeks later. He's like, hey, man, I listened to season 1. I was like, all of it? He's like, yeah. He's like, it reminded me. He's like, I wanted to reach out to this organization. There's an organization here. It's called Guitars for Guns or something like that. And it helps teach inner city kids music classes. And he's like, so I reached out to them because I wanted to donate my services, my photography services to them if they needed it. So that's great. Maybe you have a skill or a trade, that you can offer.
Yeah.
I have people who have cooking chops, and they want to know how they can help, and I'll connect them with an organization, in a city, and to help with give a cooking class or something like that. But whether you are a plumber and know how to fix a toilet or a sink, or a photographer or an artist or whatever, musician, whatever your trade is, like, someone could use your help most often. We all have enough on our plate for sure, but it also feels good to, sometimes you get way more out of, you get way more out of it than what you put into it.
And the whole point of really understanding what your skill is and how can you take that into your community. That's great.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's hard to, we have the celebrity season of Beyond the Plate, which we're in the middle of or about to start. And then we'll go back into the chef episode. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people reaching out to us, like pitching us chefs, which is, I guess, flattering.
That's great.
Awesome.
It started happening early on in season 1, but I thought we were just going to have all different types of chefs. And then Andrew Zimmern was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And Rachael and all these people. And I'm like, well, crap, now I have this, level of, chef.
Yeah.
Are you going to
maintain that
now? But even for someone that hasn't maybe necessarily had the success of someone like that, they have an awesome story to tell too. So I hope to.
They're all so interesting. I mean, I haven't found, and there were some of them that in your last couple seasons that I hadn't heard of those chefs. I hadn't heard of every single one of them, but they were all endlessly interesting episodes. So I would be interested to hear any chef probably be interviewed on there.
I'm excited to get back into the chef ones, but even the celebrity one, it was kind of like, I don't know, you see more and more celebrities affiliated with a restaurant or having a cookbook or a show, and we're like, let's just do like a one-off like celeb season to see how it goes. And we have some fun ones lined up, and some of them just love food, some of them do have a cookbook, some of them are part owner of a restaurant, but at the end of the day, they all give back, and they're so fascinating to talk to because they're so far like super passionate about what they give back to. Chefs are too, but these celebs like Neil Patrick Harris and David Burka talked about how they give back and how they instill that on their own children. They have two, twin children. So it should be a fun season. Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. The teaser's out now, and when does it drop? This Wednesday.
All right. So by the time this airs, the first episode will be out as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, we can't thank you enough for that.
Thank you so much, Kappy. It's
so wonderful.
So great to talk with you.
We're so in awe of what you do in your work. It's great.
I appreciate that. Thank you for reaching out, and this was a fun chat.
Well, thank you so much for listening. Remember, when you're done with this podcast, look down at your phone. Do it right now. Rate and review us. Give us some good thoughts. Also, remember, you can send us an email if you'd like it. You won't believe what I ate at gmail.com. If you'd like to ask us any questions, check out our website, youwon'tbelievewhatIate.com. And remember, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night.
And also, if this is new to you, do check out our other episodes, which often are just Rick and I taking on a particular subject, like cheese or fish or salt or food addiction or how to handle the holidays. And we also sometimes have interviews with other great professionals in the field. So check out our other episodes. We're in our 4th season right now, our 4th year. So we have a lot of episodes out there for you to catch up. So do subscribe and help other people find us. Thanks so much.